Hello and welcome everyone to the Q&A for Radical Wisdom for Radical Times. Follow in the footsteps of St. Francis of Assisi to live an essential life of contemplation, courage, and purpose. I'm Carrie Hernandez with the Shift Network, and it is my pleasure to be your host as we explore the teachings of James Twyman and address questions about his upcoming course, which begins on Tuesday, September 8th at 1 p.m. Pacific. And if you're unable to join us live for those courses, you can still participate, and I'll be explaining more about that later. But first, I want to introduce my guest. James Twyman is the New York Times bestselling author of 16 books, including The Moses Code. He's also known around the world as the Peace Troubadour, having traveled to many countries at war to share the prayers of peace from the world's 12 major religions that he put to music in 1994. James has recorded more than 15 albums and has produced or directed 6 films, including Redwood Highway and Indigo. In 2018, he was consecrated a Franciscan hermit and now lives in Mexico, where he founded Namaste Lake Chapala, an interfaith peace community. Please join me. It's my great pleasure to welcome James, who is going to lead us in an opening practice. Welcome, James. It's great to have you with us.
It's so great to be here. Thank you so much, everyone at the Shift Network, everyone who's joining us from around the world. I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to go a little bit deeper into this amazing spiritual path that was exemplified 800 years ago by Francis of Assisi, Francesco Bernardone, this fool who changed the world. And we're going to be exploring that and, of course, answering your questions as well. But I'd like to begin by opening with a little meditation and a song. And this is meant just to open up our hearts to this message. And even if this is the only program you're ever part of, my only prayer is that this will go as deep as possible to create whatever transformation we need. And we all probably have heard the prayer of St. Francis, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. We could talk about that so much, and during the course, we will talk about it a lot. But I wanted to bring up just one line that we all have probably heard from that prayer, which is, it is in giving that we receive, it is in loving that we are loved. And I think within these few short words, we hear the mystical teachings of almost every great spiritual teacher and mystic from any religion. The more we become the source of this wisdom, of this light, of this everything, the more we receive, because there's only one of us here. We have to change our dualistic mind to the holistic or non-dual mind that sees only one. In fact, before we even get started, I'm just thinking of a quick 10-second little exercise that can help illustrate what I'm saying. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take and put one finger right in front of your face like this. Okay. Now, I want you to look at your finger. Now, you know that there's only one finger there, and as you look at your finger, you see only one finger when you're focused on your finger. But now, I want you to look at something in the distance. Just shift your focus. If there's a picture or something on the wall opposite you, look at that while having the finger still there. Or if you're outside, look at a tree in the distance, and you'll notice something changed. How many fingers do you see now? Well, the answer is 2. Now, shift your focus back to the finger, and once again, you see only 1. And really, this is the whole thing. This is everything we're going to be discussing in the course. And I think any great teacher is going to bring us into that same experience of moving 2 into 1. And this happens when we become the source of this for others. And there's a prayer that I want to share, because I know last time I shared the prayer of St. Francis, but there's another beautiful prayer that I would love to sing for you, which is actually a prayer written by Mother Teresa. And she took that one line from the prayer of St. Francis, "It is in giving that we receive." And she wrote a whole prayer around it. And I remember the first time I ever heard this was back in 1994. That's right. And I was visiting a school outside Boston called the Life Experience School. And this was a school for children and adults who are developmentally disabled. And they had a program there called the Special Peace Corps. They would go out into the community several times a week, and they would serve in food pantries or nursing homes, whatever they could do, because they understood this law. It is in giving that we receive. It is in loving that we are loved. And before they would go out, they would always share this prayer for Mother Teresa that I'm going to share with you now. I remember the first time I heard it, I was so moved. I immediately, within 10 minutes, I took a copy of the prayer and put it to music. And I think of all the thousands of prayers and songs that I've written over the years, this one is definitely in the top 2 or 3. So I thought I would share this with you as a meditation to help bring us into this experience of the two becoming one. When I am hungry, give me someone that I can feed. And when I am thirsty, show me someone who needs a drink. And when I'm cold, give me someone to keep warm. And when I grieve, show me someone to console. Too heavy and its weight I cannot bear, and when I need someone to hold me and it seems no one is there to lighten up my heavy load, give me someone who deserves to be loved just as I do. Give me someone that I can serve, someone that I can serve. When I need some time, let me sit with one for a while. And when my heart's heavy, let me find someone to make smile. And when I'm humbled, give me someone that I can praise. And when I need to be looked after, show me someone that I can raise. When I need some understanding. Give me someone who needs mine. And when I think of myself only, draw my thoughts to those who are kind. When I'm so poor, give me someone who's in need. And when my eyes are blind to what is holy, let me see the Christ in the eyes of each one whom I feed. Let me see the Christ in their eyes.
Thank you so much, James. Beautiful, so beautiful. And I know we are getting ready to get into our questions, but first I'd love you to share where you're joining us from, your interesting location.
Oh, yeah, that. Well, I live in Mexico, a small town called Ajijic, Mexico, which is near Guadalajara. It's a very, very big, very vibrant expat community. And I founded a spiritual community here called Namaste Lake Chapala. We have, I think it's 41 houses or apartments here, and an amazing group. And I have always felt this call inward. You mentioned being a hermit. It shifted a little bit because now I have taken vows for 1 year to be what's called an anchorite. Now, an anchorite is a very ancient tradition, primarily from medieval times. It really hasn't existed at all for hundreds of years. In medieval times, when someone wanted to give themselves to a life of contemplation and prayer, there would be a little enclosure that would be built onto a church. And when the anchorite or anchoress, as a woman, would enter into this enclosure, the door would be bricked behind them and they would never leave again for the rest of their life. And they would be living a life of contemplation and prayer. There would be two windows, one looking into the church so they could attend Mass, and the other looking out onto the street so people could visit them or they could bring food. And we built a little enclosure just like that here at the Namaste community. And I will be here for 1 year. I've only been here for about 2.5 weeks now, but I have to say it's been amazing, so deep and so profound. I do have a little window where members of the community can come and share with me or seek spiritual guidance or whatever's needed or bring me my dinner. But all I have is this little tiny room, which is big enough for a desk, a tiny little bathroom, and I'm looking straight forward here at what is my bedroom, which is barely big enough for a twin bed. It's more like a little cave, no windows. And it sounds radical, but this is one of the things we're going to be talking a lot about in this course, because Francis was a radical. And it was his radical example that changed the world 800 years ago. So we need people who take a radical approach. To me, this is not so radical, but to many people it is. To me, this is just an opportunity to spend a year going as deep as I possibly can go. So that's where I'm at right now.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us know. I'm very excited for your journey and all that you're creating in that. And I want to let everyone know that we're going to spend the rest of our time right now exploring questions for James as we prepare for his upcoming video course, Radical Wisdom for Radical Times, which begins on Tuesday, September 8th at 1 p.m. And you can go ahead and visit our website, which is radicalwisdom.com, to learn more about this 7-module course. and you'll find a link for registration. And now we're going to get started with our questions, and a thank you to all of you who have sent in questions ahead of time through our webcast. And for those of you joining us live, please go ahead and just type on your questions right on in, and I can read them aloud. Thank you. And we're going to start with first question coming in, sharing, I've lived in a 250 square foot home for the past 3 years. At first it felt liberating, but now it feels like a form of punishment, like a prison cell. What do you suppose has changed, making it feel like a punishment instead of freedom? And this feels like something very different than having to shelter in place. I feel like I'm being punished.
Good question. I mean, there's so much talk today about minimalism, tiny houses, and you obviously have taken that very seriously, which is great. Obviously, your house hasn't changed. Your tiny house hasn't gotten smaller. So something in your mind has changed. There's some decision that has been made, or something has been coming up for you to look at, bless, and heal. And I think that's the opportunity. We often think that when these things come up, that we should run away, but I say run toward, run into that feeling. You feel like you're being punished. You feel like you're being limited. Something has shifted for you. And this is just your mind showing you an area that needs to be loved and healed. And so my suggestion is always just wrap your arms around yourself and whatever you're feeling, just like you would a child that is seeking advice or is afraid, and just see where that takes you. It doesn't mean that you need to change houses. See, that's usually what we do. We try and change what's going on the outside rather than realizing there's literally nothing going on the outside. That's a very high metaphysical concept, but it's the truth. There's nothing going on the outside. Everything that you're experiencing is happening within you. And so the opportunity to heal whatever's coming up is also within you. It's not in the 250 square foot house, or it's not in the pandemic or anything else. There's something that you shifted or something that has emerged for you to look at and heal. So my suggestion is hold still and just give yourself the opportunity to feel that and to see what it has to teach you. And I have a feeling that if you do that, you're going to find a shift take place, and suddenly it's no longer going to feel like a punishment, but it's going to go back to feeling like a beautiful expression of whatever simple truth and peace is moving through you. So thank you for that question.
Thank you for your answer, James. Our next question asks, what are things I can do to help support feeling more courageous about following my passions as I get caught up in worry about being judged by others?
Once again, worrying about what's happening out here. And the same thing applies. There's literally nothing happening outside you. Now, this is a concept until it's an experience. Until you dive into the experience of, it's just like that little exercise that I did with the finger. We're so accustomed to looking at something in the distance and seeing two, that the idea of shifting back to the finger and seeing only one seems foreign to us. And the same thing is true spiritually. We've been looking outside of ourselves for so long, thinking that the problem is out there and that the solution must be out there as well. We forget that the problem and the solution are in the same place, within me. And so there's only one place for us to look, for courage, for anything, and not to worry about what's going on outside of us. This is one of the things we're going to be covering in the 7-week course, is the courage of St. Francis, who he cared a lot about what people thought about him in the beginning. He was the reveler. He was the most popular partier in town. If you wanted a good time, you went to Francesco. And he was deathly afraid of what people would think of him when he felt this internal change beginning to happen, when he felt something moving inside him. But he followed it, and he didn't stop. He didn't slow down until he finally got to the point where that transformation was so amazing that he didn't care anymore. He didn't mind being called a fool. He didn't mind people throwing mud at him and thinking that he was the biggest idiot in Assisi. The biggest idiot, because he gave up a life of wealth to wear rags and to live with the lepers. And it didn't take long at all for the rest of Europe to catch on to what was really happening. And only a few years later, he became probably the most revered person in the whole world, to the point that 800 years ago, we're still talking about him and using his radical example. So it keeps coming back to the same answer. Don't look outside yourself. Be willing to take the risk to look foolish, to look radical. And in doing so, you're going to find a shift take place within you that takes you beyond all of those judgments, all of those fears, and the rest will happen on its own.
Thank you for that inspiration. And I want to clarify for everyone that our website to learn more about James's course is radicalwisdomcourse.com. Thank you, everyone. Our next question. I feel stuck, weighed down by the repeating patterns of my life that aren't moving me where I'd like to go. What practices or teachings can you recommend to help me with this?
You know, that song that I shared, which is called the Servant Prayer, the prayer that Mother Teresa wrote from the prayer of St. Francis, and that one line, it is in giving that we receive. That's the answer. It is in giving that we receive. So listen to the beginning words of that prayer. When I'm hungry, give me someone that I can feed. When I'm thirsty, give me someone to give a drink to. When I'm cold, give me someone to keep warm. And on and on. And basically the teaching is, whatever it is that I'm feeling that I'm lacking or needing, become the source of that to another. You can't give away something you don't have. You see, that's the magic and the miracle of this. If you feel like you're lacking compassion in your life, and you find a way to express compassion to another, well, guess what? You discovered that compassion was within you all along. If you find or feel that there's no love in your life, and instead of worrying about that or getting pulled down by that, you instead found someone that you can love, guess what? Now you've discovered that love does exist and thrive within you. So once again, whatever it is you feel like you're needing, become the source of that to another. Because in doing so, you find that it's always been within you, because everything is within you. But you have to be able to give it away before you can realize it.
Our next question asks, how to keep oneself from dealing with the fear when going within to heal?
Dealing with the fear to go in to heal. It's a very interesting question. I'm not sure why we would be afraid to go within to heal, but I understand it. Because in one way or another, we all experience that. Another way of looking at this, I'll shift gears just a little bit. Many of us say that we want to know intimately God, the beloved, however you express that, the source of all, that you want to know that as an intimate reality, okay? Well, the truth is, it's not the first thing you want. It's not the biggest thing you want. The truth is, it's the last thing you want. Because when we finally have that intimate face-to-face with the divine, that's when our greatest fear comes up. And so this is why this relates to healing. Your greatest fear is not having love. Your greatest fear is love. Your greatest fear isn't not being at one with God. Your greatest fear is that face-to-face with God because of an experience that we all have deep in the core of our ego called guilt. Somehow we're afraid that we've done something or deserved something. And when we have that face-to-face with the divine, or we have that opportunity to heal, it's only then that that primordial guilt surfaces. Or in the case of having that face-to-face with God, it's then that we have to finally look at our greatest fear, which is the face-to-face with reality, with love, with the divine, however you want to express that. But here's the key. The guilt that you feel, the thing that you think you did, even though you can't really put your finger on what it is you think you did to deserve any of this or to feel guilty, it never occurred. It never happened. Ultimately, the guilt is because you, me, we all feel like we separated from everything, that we're separate from God, and somehow we did something to cause that separation. But here's the truth. It didn't happen. You can let it go. And this applies to the question into healing. Why would you be afraid to heal? Because there's something that's telling you that you deserve not to heal. But the thing that you think that you did to deserve that never really happened. Now, once again, this is a concept until you have an actual experience of it, until it's fully integrated. But at least it begins the process. All you need to do is to be willing to consider that what I'm telling you is true, that what you're experiencing or what you're feeling in reality never happened. And if you can do that, then that guilt begins to dissolve. And you begin to find yourself lighter and more open. And then the fear disappears of healing, of the divine, whatever it is, of love. And you find yourself face to face with that which you are, with the source of who you are. God is but love, and therefore so am I. So I don't know if that helped, but that's what comes into my mind.
Our next question asks, how does Franciscan spirituality differ from other spiritualities in the Catholic Christian tradition?
Oh, such a good question. If we go back historically, at the time of Francis, or slightly before that, if one wanted to follow a religious path, especially as a man, you had two choices. You either became a parish priest or you entered a monastery. Now, it had only been about 200 years before Francis, maybe even less than that, that priests were not allowed to get married. A lot of people don't realize that. They think that priestly celibacy has always been true, and it has not. It's only been true for less than half of the life of the church. And it was all financial. It was because the church was losing so much money when priests would die and the family would want part of the inheritance of the parish. But at the time of Francis, for about a couple of hundred years at that point, you became a celibate priest and served in a parish, or you became a monk. But when Francis came along, and he wanted to do something different. He didn't want to live in a monastery away from people, but he also knew the importance of community and deep prayer. So he did something kind of in the middle. It's called the mendicant orders. Okay, so the Franciscan order, people sometimes say monks, but the Franciscans are not monks, they're friars. Friar means brother. And they work among the people, but they also live in community, and the community is a very big part of their life. And they have a very deep prayer life. They pray together many times a day. So it's like halfway between being a monk and being a parish priest. The other thing that is very, very significant, and you see this in many of the great Franciscan philosophers like Duns Scotus, most of the Catholic Church its primary focus is on the resurrection. But in Franciscan spirituality, the focus begins with the incarnation, or the Christ coming into form. Now, when I say Christ, of course I'm referring to Jesus, but I'm referring to a lot more than just Jesus. Jesus certainly was the embodiment of the Christ, but no more so than you. And this is something that it talks about, Jesus talks about himself, but so often gets pushed to the side. Richard Rohr, another great Franciscan, he says, Christ is just another word for everything. And just this morning here at Namaste, someone was talking about a realization that they had, which is that Christ is all of our last name. So it's Jimmy Christ or Barbara Christ or Michael Christ, because this is what we're waking up to realizing, is that this is the truth within all of us. So the Franciscan spirituality, it is distinct. Of course, it's in harmony, but it's really all about focus. Are we going to focus on the crucifixion and the resurrection? Of course, from a Christian perspective, that's an important thing. But Franciscans, they focus more on the fact that the Word or the Logos or the Christ became incarnate, took on a life just as we are, to show us and to demonstrate that the truth of who you are cannot die. That the truth of who you are is the Christ. So once again, I hope that answered the question.
Thank you, James. And we are here with James.
Questions now. You're getting deep into philosophy, I see.
Yes, we are. Our questions definitely are. And we are here with James Twyman, learning about his course, Radical Wisdom for Radical Times, which begins on Tuesday, September 8th. And you can log on to radicalwisdomcourse.com. One more time, that's radicalwisdomcourse.com for all the details and to register. Our next question is sharing, I have never felt so moved as by your beautiful rendition of St. Francis's Instrument of Your Peace. It was truly heart-opening, and when you sang the word beloved, I felt immediately connected with the divine. My question is, will there be plenty of singing during this course?
Of course. You can't, one of the things that I often say is that if I'm asked to do a lecture, I'm going to talk more than I sing. If I'm hired to do a concert, I'm going to sing more than I talk. But I'm going to always sing and I'm always going to talk. And for me, music is my access point. I think of myself more as a musician than a writer. Many of my books came from adventures that I would have traveling through war zones and different countries, sharing the peace prayers or other musicals. Many of you may know that I recently, at the beginning of this year, I traveled across the U.S. Sharing this beautiful musical that I wrote based on the life of St. Francis, called Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon. I traveled from the West Coast to the East Coast for over 2 months, penniless, with no money, no idea how I was getting from place to place, where I would stay, in order to perform it for a long run as an off-Broadway show in New York. And we had to cut it a little bit short, unfortunately, because the pandemic was just beginning. But it was one of the best experiences of my life, being able to share this to music. So to answer your question, yes, there will be plenty of music, plenty of songs, and plenty of opportunities for us all to sing.
Wonderful. Thank you for letting us know. Our next question asks, I often feel resistant to extending compassion to others when I feel they aren't making an effort to help themselves, and I really know I need to open my heart, but it feels challenging. What do you suggest?
Oh, that's a great one, because we like to differentiate in our mind who we think deserves and who we think don't deserve love, compassion, our good wishes, whatever it may be. This person isn't making an effort, so I should give that person compassion or love. This person doesn't seem to be making an effort at all, so maybe I should hold back. But once again, we go back to that beautiful prayer from Mother Teresa. Anything I hold back from thee, I'm really holding back from me. And likewise, anything that I'm giving to you, I'm giving to myself. And it has nothing to do with deserving. If that were true, we would all be in trouble, wouldn't we? If we were banking on having made the effort and deserving any of this, we would all be up, the creek. The truth is, based only upon who you are, who you've always been, who you can't stop being, the truth of who you are, your real self. This is why you and we all deserve love, compassion, peace in abundance beyond anything we can even begin to imagine. And when we begin to hold back from people thinking that they do or don't deserve, first of all, who am I to judge that? There's no way I could possibly ever know another person's story or what they're going through. So my solution is give love to everyone. Be the source of peace to everyone you meet. When people ask me, what's a simple practice that I can follow that would open up that door to this experience? And I say experience because it is an experience. It's not an intellectual understanding. We need to come into an actual experience of our enlightenment or of our holiness. And the answer I usually give is the quickest and the most profound thing you can do is spend a half hour a day walking around wherever you find yourself and just look at whoever you pass and whoever you see and knowing, not believing, but knowing that this is, we'll say the Christ, we could say a lot of things, that this is the expression of love, this is the beloved. This is the beloved right in front of me. It has nothing to do with whether they deserve me to see this or not. It has nothing to do with what they've done or what they will do. It's my willingness to give them that gift. And guess what happens? The more I give that gift away, the more I receive it. So of course, we all have an issue with this. This is part of what it means to be a human being. But the quicker we can realize it has nothing to do with deserving, and it has nothing to do with what we've done or anything like that, that my only role is to love as God loves and to extend that love to everyone that I meet.
Our next question asks, how do we know the difference between a soul craving and an ego craving or desire?
It's what I call the Holy Spirit tickle. That's the way I see it. It's about discernment and it's about listening to guidance. Listening to guidance is the most important thing we can do, but people often ask that question, how do I know the difference? How do I know when I'm receiving guidance from what we could call the Holy Spirit or just my own ego playing with me? And for me, the difference is when I am hearing guidance coming from the Holy Spirit, it tickles, or there's a lightness, or there is this energy, like an effervescence that bubbles up inside me. And that's how I know. When it's my ego, it's either just an intellectual musing, and there's none of that effervescence, or I can sense a slight heaviness to it. I can sense a judgment to it, me judging someone or something, or judging myself. And if I feel anything other than that sparkle, that effervescence, that Holy Spirit tickle, then we just hold still and we do nothing. And I just go deeper and I say, what is this? What is this teaching me? Because even my ego is there to teach me something. But the key is to just attune yourself to be able to feel the tickle, the effervescence, and to know that it's a very different thing than when it's coming from my ego. And after a little while, you're going to get to the point where you really can tell the difference.
Thank you, James. I love the Holy Spirit tickle, and I can see the sparkling bubble. Thank you for that analogy. Wonderful. Our next question is asking, how much do we have to simplify in order to live fully and not feel attached to material things?
Well, it's going to be very individual. Basically, if there's, I hate to say this, but if there's anything in your life that you feel like I can't live without, or I need this to be safe, that's what you need to give up. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to get rid of it. For example, if you feel like you need to have a certain amount of money to feel safe, well, the feeling that you're not safe unless you have money is the issue. the feeling that you're not completely dependent upon grace, or that everything you ever need is going to be given to you easily and perfectly. Jesus said, seek first the kingdom of God and everything else will be given to you. And it's true. And I think many of us, if not most of us, have had that experience at one time or another. So if it's a money issue or abundance that you feel like, I don't know what I'll do if I don't have enough money, what you need to do is to look at that. What you need to do is to ask for help around this, to see it differently, to realize that my source is love. My source is God, not money. And when I realize where my source is, what my source is, everything else I need will come to me. And once again, it doesn't mean that you need to go give all your money away, but it might. Isn't that interesting? It might. But for most of us, it won't. It's just about detaching from it, or letting go of the importance, thinking that we have to have it. You know, there's a great story in one of the Gospels where a man came to Jesus and asked, what must I do to attain the kingdom? And he said something that had a huge impact on Francis's life. He said, go and sell everything you have, give the money to the poor, and come and follow me. Now, the question is, who was Jesus saying that to? He was saying it to a rich man who was attached to his wealth. And when Jesus said this, he left disheartened because he was afraid to give up what he thought he needed. Well, the same was true for Francis. Francis, once again, was the son of one of the richest merchants in the whole town. He was so well known, and he was being asked to do the same thing, to sell everything that he had. And he took it literally. He went in front of the whole town, stripped naked, gave his clothes and his name back to his father, and walked out of the town naked. Now, once again, he was a radical. And probably none of us are being, not even me who's a radical, are being asked to strip naked in front of the whole town. But we have to simply watch and notice where our attachments are, be willing to learn a lesson of how to let go of them, and then trust that Holy Spirit tickle that's going to show us how to do that.
Our next question asks, if St. Francis were alive today, what do you think he would say about the state of our world?
Oh boy. You guys ask good questions. Well, first of all, we need to know that the state of our world today is very similar to the state of the world in Francis's time. Tremendous division, tremendous polarization, maybe even to a greater degree. At that time, it wasn't countries that would go to war with each other, it was towns. So Assisi being a neighbor to Perugia, that was the closest big town. That would have been a city. It is a city now. And there was always division going on between a papal city, a city like Perugia that the Pope controlled, or a town like Assisi wanting to be independent of everybody, independent of Rome, independent of the Holy Roman Emperor, to make their own laws. And so they would go to war, and this is how Francis began his transformation. The Assisians were slaughtered, Francis was taken prison, and he was in prison for a year before he was finally ransomed. So there was a great division. There were plagues that would come along periodically. You know, one of the best known anchorites, or I should say anchoresses in the world, was Julian of Norwich. A lot of people are talking about Julian now because in this time of quarantine, she quarantined herself into an anchor hold, much like where I'm living, for over 40 years. I'm doing it for 1 year. She was in her for over 40, and she lived through 4 different rounds of the Black Plague, which literally killed half of Europe. Now, obviously, we're going through a difficult time, but when you think about it, it's nothing compared to what Francis and Julian went through. But to answer your question directly, I think if Francis were here today, he would offer the same solution that he offered to the people of his time, which is stop it. Stop putting your own interests first. Start by realizing that we're in this together. The polarization that we see in the world right now, or in the US, or the pandemic that has really united us. It's the first time in any of our lifetimes that we've been united, to a single purpose. It's time for us to realize that we are in this together, that we are one, that there aren't billions of separate people. We are one. And I think he would remind us that it is in giving that we receive. It is in loving that we loved, and that we have to do the hard work. And it's an individual thing. It's not about me expecting everyone else to do it. I need to make the choice. I need to become radical in this sense. So I think Francis, he would do the same thing he did then. He would make a radical choice, become a radical example, and in doing so, he would start a new renaissance, just as he did 800 years ago, and which we're called to do now.
Thank you, James. And I really appreciate at the core what you said. Stop it. I appreciate your message and answer. Oh, my goodness.
Simple.
Well, so simple. We do have time for a few more questions. And before we take those, I'd like to share some of the details about radical wisdom for radical times. You can join with James and all others who attend this course for a 7-week journey in becoming an instrument of peace and a source of a new way of looking at the world and each other. This 7-module course takes place on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. and it starts on September 8th. When taking the course, you will receive audio and video recording replays, transcripts, and any other materials through our course homepage. Also, I'd like to remind you that we do offer a no-risk money-back guarantee on all of our courses, giving a full 2 weeks, and in this case until September 22nd, to make sure you absolutely love it. And as an added option, all participants are welcome to connect on a private community group specifically for this class that we host on Facebook. And everyone who registers receives Radical Wisdom for Radical Times bonus collection. I'd love to share there are several things in this permanent bonus collection that include the Levitation Meditation, 2 video recordings from James Twyman, The Path of the Anchorite. This is a video dialogue with James Twyman and Mirabai Starr. The Prayer of St. Francis. This is a video dialogue with James Twyman and Miranda McPherson. And Daily Flowers of St. Francis. It's a series of 20 short movies from James Twyman. And No Love But God's. It's a music video from James. And when you register by midnight Pacific, September 2nd, you'll receive the following bonus, which is, Brother, Sun, Sister Moon, musical necessity. This is a video excerpt from James' one-man show in 2019. He performed in a one-man musical, Brother, Sun, Sister Moon, in a chapel in Assisi. This 20-minute video features an artful, high-quality excerpt of his touching performance, and it's the one he spoke of earlier in our conversation today. Thank you so much for your time on all the information. And I have our next question ready for James. And it's a simple, what is contemplative forgiveness?
Oh, wow. Contemplative forgiveness. Well, I'll begin by saying that I've been a student of A Course in Miracles for over 25 years. A Course in Miracles, if you're not very familiar with it, is the path of forgiveness. And yet it approaches the subject of forgiveness from a very different perspective than what we're used to. It differentiates between what it calls forgiveness to heal and forgiveness to attack. Forgiveness to attack is our usual human understanding. It basically says that you have committed some sort of an offense against me, but I am going to rise above you and what you did to me and forgive you, let you off the hook. And this, it says, is really an attack because it maintains that separation. Okay? Forgiveness to heal is very different, and this is how A Course in Miracles defines forgiveness. And it's radical, once again. You're not going to understand this intellectually. It's an experience, and when you have the experience of it, you'll say, oh my gosh, now I get it. But basically what it says is that the offense that I think occurred in reality never did. Therefore, no forgiveness is even required. It would be similar to tonight when you're sleeping, having a dream that your neighbor stole your lawnmower or stole something else. And then you wake up and you walk over to your neighbor and punch him in the nose or something similar. That wouldn't make any sense because the offense never really occurred. It didn't really happen. So this is how A Course in Miracles defines forgiveness. So now we come to the question of contemplative forgiveness. So being a contemplation, it's a form of prayer, but it's different than what we usually think of as prayer. Many of us think of prayer as being something that we say or something that we do. We pray the Our Father or some other, or the prayer of St. Francis or whatever it may be. A contemplative practice begins by holding still and just opening and allowing an experience to take hold of us. So me here in my anchor hold for this year, this whole experience is a contemplative experience. I spend several hours every day just being open, allowing that grace to take hold of me. And when that grace does take hold of me, when I do enter into that experience, something happens that I can't describe because it's beyond description, it's beyond the intellect or any conceptual idea. But it's the experience that, once again, forgiveness is not required because I am perfect, whole, and complete right here, right now. Now, once again, my willingness to give that to you and to anyone else is how I'm going to come into the full experience of this. I need to be the source of this. So we begin with this true understanding of forgiveness to heal. I take it into a contemplative practice, which is just to open and to allow that experience to take hold of me, and then I become the source of that for another or anyone and everyone, and in that way come into a full and lasting experience myself.
Our next question asks, what is your view of all is well?
Oh, Julian. Okay. Someone knows their Julian of Norwich. It's probably the most famous line of Julian. All is well, all is well, and all manner of things are well. Outside my anchor hold, I wish I could show this to you. There is a beautiful mural that an artist here in Ajijic painted of Julian of Norwich. And before I go right into the question, I'll say that in the painting, she's holding a hazelnut. And this is because when Julian was in her anchor hold, she was unwrapping a series of visions that she had when she was deathly ill. And in one of these visions, God showed her a hazelnut and basically said that all of created reality can fit inside the size of a simple, small hazelnut. And it's interesting that today, scientists have told us a very similar thing. I recently heard that, we all know that there is 1 million times more space than there is matter. Okay, that we're made up of primarily open space. And they said that if you took all the actual matter in the universe and pulled it all together, it would be the size of a hazelnut. I thought that was an amazing thing, that here is Julian hundreds of years ago saying something or hearing something from the divine that scientists are now just beginning to understand. And so Julian's whole vision of all is well, all manner of things will be well, I think is a very good lesson for us today. We have to relax. We have to realize that even in times like this, when there's a pandemic, when we're not able to do the things that we like to do or want to do, that something is opening that we can't see right now. There is an opportunity that's at hand. For example, this course. Maybe this course wouldn't have happened if there wasn't this opportunity for us to hold still for a while. I know here at our Namaste community, we have sessions every morning or 6 days a week. And for the last 2 years, it's been just the community living together. We would come together every morning. But when the pandemic started, we thought, well, let's share this with more people. So we began doing them on Zoom. We would have 60 to 100 people every morning with us. And then we thought, well, let's put the videos up on YouTube. So there'd be another few hundred people. So because of this pandemic, because we had to shrink, because of this challenge, we've expanded in allowing many more people to join us here at Namaste. The same thing is happening with the Shift Network. The same thing is maybe happening with any other spiritual community that you're part of. So I think Julian was right on when she said, all will be well. She was realizing that in the end, what's that great line? In the end, everything works out, and if it hasn't worked out, it's not the end. I think maybe Jim Carrey said that. But it's very similar, I think, to what Julian was trying to express as well.
Thank you so much, James. And I really appreciate your answering so many of our questions. I'm curious, what are you most looking forward to sharing in this class with those who take this journey with you?
Oh, I could say all of it, which is true. But there are certain modules that I'm most excited about. I'll say one of them is the module called the Radical Fool or the Divine Fool. And I've been reflecting on that quite a bit lately. And I'm sure I'll talk about this in the whole course, but there are 3 primary archetypes in my life that are expressing itself, and I'm sure will be expressed through this course. And those 3 archetypes are, number 1, the radical. That's going to be very clear in this course. We're being called to be radical, which really just means that we're going to take this seriously. We're not going to go lukewarm. We're going to really go for it. And to do that, we all need to find some kind of radical expression. It's not going to be like what I'm doing or what Francis did, but for each one of us, there's going to be something. So that's the first archetype. The second is the fool, the radical or the holy fool, which is an archetype that we find in almost every spiritual tradition. And finally, and this is where we're ultimately going, this may sound funny, but it's true, and it will say the holy drunkard, or the divine elixir. When we get to the point where we have integrated this so much that it's as if we are high, because we've been lifted above the world, above limitation, above separation. And when we lift above, like being in a hot air balloon, and we look down, we can feel this sense of being high or intoxicated, God intoxication, because we're no longer bound by the same constraints or worries or concerns that we were before. So I think my ultimate goal is for us all to lift above this world of conceptual limitations and to feel that sense of being God intoxicated and knowing that we can live in that space all the time. And when we do, people will look into our eyes and we don't need to say a word, and they're going to want what it is that they feel within us. One of my total favorite line of St. Francis is when he said, our only job is to preach the gospel wherever we go, or to teach love wherever we go, and only when necessary to use words. It has very little to do with the words or the concept. It has to do with what we're sharing eye to eye.
Thank you. Thank you, James, so much for your enthusiasm and your joy in your teaching. And I thank everyone for joining us. Radical Wisdom for Radical Times begins Tuesday, September 8th. And again, you can visit radicalwisdomcourse.com franciscanwellness.com to learn more and register. And if you do so by midnight, September 2nd, you'll receive the special bonus, a video entitled Brother Sun, Sister Moon. James, do you have any final words for our listeners?
Well, I'm just so happy to all of you for joining me and joining us. And I hope, of course, that you join us for the course, because this is just a taste of what we're going to be doing for 7 weeks. And I promise that if you really give yourself to this path, this radical path, then you're going to look back at this radical time and you're going to be so grateful, because the fruit that's going to come from this awakening that we're going to enjoy together is going to be sweeter than anything else you've ever tasted. So I hope you join us. I would love to see all of you there. I know we're going to have a great, intimate, and amazing time. But regardless, I'm just so happy that we had this beautiful experience together.
As am I. Thank you again, James.
You're so welcome. Thanks, everyone.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And on behalf of all of us here at the Shift Network, I wish you well, and I look forward to having you on this course or one in the future. Thank you.